a moment of appreciation for the dance partner Harris, who graciously allowed to use his video materials for this channel. Hi, Harris.
Hello.
So tell me, why ballroom?
Well, I grew up in a household where my mother was a professional dancer.
And what style did you dance?
She danced Latin. She danced with a partner. So the music, the Latin music, I grew up hearing, since I'm a little boy. In my teenage years, the music I liked, of course, was rock and roll. But when I was 17 and I started to go to clubs, I remember one of my favorite nights was Monday nights at what they call the Village Gate in New York City, in Greenwich Village. And on Monday nights was Latin night. And they had the bands come in, 2 or 3 bands came in and played for the next 3-4 hours. Joe Cuba, Ray Barretto, Larry Harlow, Tito Puente, Mongo Santa Maria, Orchestra Broadway, Eddie Palmieri and La Perfecta. Charlie Palmieri, his brother, had a different band. These bands were terrific. And the singers were all terrific. So Latin, I liked Latin. Now, ballroom dancing has Latin in it. Well, I used to go into a lot of dance contests when I was younger.
Were you able to develop your dance career going through the teenage years into your adulthood?
No.
How come?
I got injured when I went to help some nurses that were being attacked. I was in a hospital visiting a friend. I heard all of a sudden screaming and yelling like pandemonium. I ran out in the hallway and there was a crowd of people. So I pushed my way through the crowd of people, and there was a guy facing away from me, facing the elevators. And right by the elevators was 3 nurses. I think one had been cut in the neck. I saw right away that this guy was, it was a real dangerous situation. I grabbed the guy, I turned him away from the nurses, and I started fighting with him. And while I was fighting with him, all of a sudden, I don't know how long it was, but all of a sudden, I became very weak and I fell to the floor. I was on my knees, I fell on my knees, and I was very weak. And at that moment, I remember very clearly that I thought, this is it for me. He's going to grab me by the hair, and he's going to just pull my head back, and he's going to cut my throat. I think at that moment, actually, I fell face down on the ground. There was doctors and nurses over there because it was in a hospital. So next thing I noticed was somebody was standing over me, and I think it was one of the doctors. And so what they did was they let the guy get away because I was bleeding on the floor very badly. I had been cut through my inner and outer walls of my stomach. I had been cut through my liver, and I had been cut through my pancreas. So I had he had stabbed me a lot of times and in vital organs areas. And I was bleeding. They let him get away, and then they stuffed a stack of sheets into my stomach, pressing down on my stomach, and blood was already going through the sheets up to the nurses' hands and wrists and stuff. A long story short, I had to go into surgery. They had to run me out of the building into another building in the medical complex. And, thank God I survived.
Thank God.
And thank God I survived.
Thank God. Well, you did a good thing.
And, I had the whole situation where my whole life passed in front of me. And I also had the thing where I was being drawn towards a blinding light. And being trying to hold back, not going towards it. Mm-hmm. And that's when I woke up in the intensive care unit. Thank God I survived.
Thank God.
And I found out later on what had happened. What had happened was this guy came to visit somebody at the hospital earlier that day, and that visit didn't go well. It was with a girl, and so the nurses had to escort him out of the building, out of the floor, into the elevator and out, gone. And this is several hours later. He had come back, I guess, with a vengeance. And I think the reason I acted when a lot of people didn't act, because, it's scary. But the thing is, what happened was, I think 9 years earlier, there was a notorious case in New York City. And by the way, this was in New York City when I got stabbed also. It was in New York City, Manhattan. The hospital was Beth Israel Hospital, and they're a very good hospital, and, and thank God, they saved me. And Now, 9 years earlier, there was a case where a woman was being attacked in Queens, that's another part of New York City. And she was screaming for help in the neighborhood. I think the neighborhood was Richmond Hill in Queens. And people opened their windows and, looked out because she was screaming, and she had been, stabbed and very badly. But nobody came down to help. They looked out, and when the attacker, saw the people opening their windows, he ran away. But when nobody came down, he had come back, and he finished her off. And her name was Kitty Genovese. It was a notorious case in New York City. And I remember, because there was, it was in the newspapers for days. And I remember I was at my aunt's house in Queens. I was visiting her for the summer. I'm from Florida. And I was visiting my aunt in New York for the summer. And I remember saying to myself, because I was so horrified by nobody going down to help her, I remember saying to myself, if this ever happens, I know I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something. I know I'm going to do something.